So we are going to pass now to the round table. So this is the time that we will appreciate a lot of participation from the audience. You can ask anything you want to the our 4 panelists. Maybe Sakia, do you want to present the panelists?
Okay. Well, we are fortunate to have 4 panelists. They're going to engage in the discussion on the role of women in renewable energy and the challenges and they have faced personally and colleagues of theirs as well. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce 4 panelists. Professor Sossina Haile, who gave us a very interesting and inspiring talk today. She will be one of the panelists. She's from Northwestern University. We have Dr. Debra Rolison, a colleague of mine, a former colleague of mine from the Naval Research Lab, who is a pioneer actually and a very strong activist in trying to fight for women's rights. And unfortunately, we're not going to see her, but we're going to hear her voice. She is on a DoD computer that doesn't have a camera. And we have also Professor Anna from l'École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne from Switzerland, and Professor Giulia from University of Pavia. And both Monica and I will be the moderators for this session.
So should we start? I think Sossina has to leave soon. So why don't we start with Sossina, if you don't mind, everybody? Sossina, each panelist has 5 minutes, and then we can we can have questions from the audience. Please use the Q&A level on the bottom of your screen, and we will talk about it, and then we can all discuss. We try to everybody to interact about this. So Sina, if you want to start, thank you.
Yeah, okay, I think my screen is showing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. So we were all asked to talk about gender differences in terms of responding to challenges and risks. And so first of all, let me say I'm hardly an expert. But I did do a cursory literature search, and I'm also, of course, going to tell you about my personal anecdotal information. So the literature on stress is actually interesting here. It says that men tend to respond with a flight, fight, or freeze reaction to stress, whereas women tend to respond with a tend and befriend, which is to say to look out for the people next to them and also to seek support from friends next to them. Of course, this doesn't mean all women and all men have differences in this way. It means these are the differences in the averages. I also found it interesting that this is linked to a specific hormone that is secreted by women under stress, which is the oxytocin. Okay, so that's,
Sina,
yeah?
I'm sorry, are you sharing your screen or
Yes.
we cannot see it?
Ah, okay. All right, let me try again. I see, I didn't actually press share after thinking that I had. Okay, thanks. Okay. All right, and it's just a few words anyway. So as I said, men tend to respond with fight, flight, fight, or freeze. Kind of hard to say that 3 times in a row. And women tend to go with tend and befriend. Okay, so that's what the literature has to say. Again, I'm not an expert. So my anecdotal observations are, irrespective of talent and knowledge, expertise, on average, the women tend to have lower self-confidence than the men. And as a consequence, women tend to take fewer risks. Now, you know, I'm not actually going to say what is good or bad about that, because it's not a good idea to have overconfidence in your skills. And it's also not really a good idea to take unnecessary risk. So overconfidence can certainly lead to imprudent risks. On the other hand, lack of confidence can, of course, lead to limiting work to incremental advances. So, there's obviously this imbalance, but we need to find the right place, which is, again, not to convert all women to be more like the men or convert all men to be more like the women. I mean, I think that we all need to find our appropriate level in terms of our skill base, what we can do, and what's the appropriate risk. So that was just trying to address the specific question there, but I'm very happy to take individual questions. But let me also just add one more thing about self-confidence and risk-taking. I think that when we are still in school and we get grades back, right, from your tests and from your homeworks and so on, that has a tendency to establish a self-confidence in one way. Whereas once we're not in the academic setting there in terms of being students, but in terms of having to tell people what is important about our work, and then there's much, much more gray area. It's not you got the answer right or wrong, and there was a specific answer. That's where I think it becomes harder for women on a general sense, because you're really pushing people to accept your science and accept your capabilities. And when people have their own biases and they're not seeing it, their unconscious biases, then it can lead to, as we well know, this imposter syndrome and things like that. So that's my observations. Okay. That was my 5 minutes. So I will turn it over.
Sossina, it's Debra.
Good to see you.
Or not see me, even better.
Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding, Debra? Don't you have a private computer?
No, I do not. I work all the time, and I can't do Fed work on a personal computer. So what's the point? Sossina, I'd like to point out one of the tongue-in-cheek things I say about confidence, that it's so important because everyone's too busy to get to know the individual. That if you don't project confidence, they don't think you're competent. And of course, many students don't feel like they're at a point where they can be projecting confidence. And my response to that is fake it till you feel it.
Very true.
It is that important. People can snap decisions that can hurt you if they equate your lack of confidence as lack of competence.
Right.
And
a thoughtful delay
you're the world's
is a challenge.
Yeah, you're the world's expert on your experiment. So that's how you start building up confidence. And that starts to accrete over time.
Great.
So I am going to not only be talking about leadership on behalf of women and my pernicious dislike of role models. And if you only remember one thing from this talk, it is science is too important to be left just to men. And that's why every person in science needs to be a leader. Every woman, every person of color, you need to find a way to be a leader. Don't wait for the people you think are the leaders to step up and lead. And that photo is me the day I received NRL's Top Science Award, the Hulbert Award, 2 years ago. I am still the only woman in its 66-year history to have won it. That's how pathetic things are. Next. If you would, whoever's advancing slides would just, every time I say next, just keep rolling, because I can do nothing on my slides. So we're in the 21st century, and we all recognize we have to transform the culture of our still too male dominant. And learning professional skills is only the start. Next. So there's been a lot of work in the States, in particular, what's called COACH. And these are workshops to teach negotiation skills, how to be a leader, how to lead in place, all these important points. They ran it for 15 years and then did a survey. And the women reported that, yes, it helped my career, but my department is as backward as it was 15 years ago. So this army of women trained to have some, if you will, skills in their career are not transforming themselves into an army to transform the culture. Next. So when I was developing many of my activist arguments, I was arguing with an 800-pound gorilla at Harvard, and he agrees that indeed we want more women and more people of color in science, but he said the university system, for all its warts, does in fact serve society very well in many ways and produces people who do great science. Next, my response was, so the fuck what? We've not done the control experiment. Next. We don't really know what science will become when we integrate the human talent that's endemic to women and to people of color. Next. And that led to my very pertinent point. Why should the taxpayer in any country support a scientific institution that discriminates against women and people of color? Next. So I have the circle of life. To me, these are the mechanistic levers we can all start pulling. Subversion, revolution, climate change. Next, let's just do some next on these. The most important one over the long term is climate change, showing that somebody who's not in the standard pattern can do great science, but that's the one that takes a few decades to put in place. Revolution, you have to be like me, willing to stand in front of the train and say stop. Or subversion, and it's always taste. Everyone feels as though they don't have enough power. So the students think the professors have the power. Well, the professors don't feel they have a power. You can be a full tenured faculty with a chair, and you still don't think you have power. So to assume that the elders, the people nominally running things have power, they don't think they have power, which is why it is so important for each of us to find a way to subvert our current system because it is sick. Next. You have to understand your system. So revolution, that was the recognition next that you're going to have to find a stick. Carrots, progressive action, take too long and really make only a modest change. So if you can threaten money, whether if it's from the government and their science foundations or from private foundations or the funding agencies, you get people's attention. Next. But subversion is the one we can all play. So that means you have to understand social psychology and sociology. You have to know about things like implicit bias, these unconscious expectations that make bad judgments. And as a scientist, we really should be in the game of making better judgments. Next. And in general, the level of prestige increases. Your top 5, top 10 departments in your discipline, the number of women in those places decreases. And we all grow up in our cultures. We all understand how the world works. And to me, this is the telling little vignette. In 2000, social scientists went into Michigan elementary schools and asked the boys and girls to imagine their life if they'd been born the other sex. Next. The girls saw real advantages to being born male, including, better jobs, better money, and respect. They recognized the respect as an important part. 95% of the boys saw no advantage to being born female. Next. So these are schemas and associations. So you need to know they exist. You need to kick them out of your own personal behavior and evaluation. And then you can start being subversive with the powers that be. Next. Next. So to me, one way is to, is in essence, challenge the dictionary. So the first is you're only here because you're a woman. Well, we've got too many men here. They are here because they've been accumulating advantage all their lives. Their failures are forgiven. They accrue advantage. Preferential hiring. Well, I don't want that spot on the committee, or I don't want this job offer. I don't want that award if it looks like it's just preferentially going to a woman. Well, we've always had preferential everything. It's just been 90% plus men. And in the United States, that's greater than 90% white men. So that's a quota. We've had universities since the 11th century, University of Bologna. So I'd like to say, isn't a millennium of affirmative action or preference for white men sufficient? The answer, of course, is yes. Next. The carrots to sticks. Most people want to see progressive action. Well, we're dealing with carnivores. We're talking about who has space, who has resources, who gets prestige. We're dealing with carnivores. Carrots are for vegetarians. Search committees actually need to search. That means there's talent out there you're not looking for because you go to the usual spots. You go to a top 5 department and ask who's graduating. There's great talent at the the 95 below that. Next. And the committees have to search. We only want the best candidate. That is usually the refuge of scoundrels. You need to make them define best. And you can do this without being confrontational. When someone says we only want the best, you say, well, let's find out what that is. Tell me what you think it is. And let's keep scrolling. Next, 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 next. Next. And then the final thing that kicks women in the teeth is choice. She chose to go part-time to take care of her family. She chose to take a less strenuous academic position. Well, many women and men make what looks like a choice, but it's actually a decision because they saw no choice. How do they create the life they want in science and outside of science? And our current culture does not really help us do that. And I'd like to remind everyone, we know science is too important to be left just to men, but we really are talking about first world problems. We don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to get enough money to feed our families. We can get a reasonable job. The problem with not having flexibility is the culture, which is why you have to find a subversive way to kick it in the teeth every chance you get. The easiest way to raise a family is to be an academic professor. You teach your courses, you do your service, you meet with your students. The rest of your schedule is pretty flexible. Very few people have that kind of flexibility. Next. So, climate change is the most important. That means you're going to run your research team or group in a way that is not the work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, flog people if they're not getting you a result. It really is the cooperative, collegial, I may not be able to work this hard this week, but when we have a crunch time, I will. Next. That takes a good 15 years before the broader community recognizes a different pattern leads to innovation and great science. Next. So we need to be warriors. And in America, the suffrage movement got kicked off in 1848 at the Women's Rights Convention. And after you went through all the arguments for why women should be allowed to vote, there was this point. He closes against her all the avenues to wealth and distinction, which he considers most honorable to himself. That is still true today for women in science. Running team research, big ticket items, getting major awards, the prestige, that is still too true. Next. And close with Adrienne Rich, the great Black queer poetess in the United States. The most important fact that culture imprints on women is the sense of our limits. The most important thing one woman can do for another is to illuminate and expand her sense of actual possibilities. So we need to be warriors, we need to lead in place, and you need to find a way to do that that is pushing you a little bit out of your comfort zone, but is still compatible with who you are. So thank you.
Debra? Oh. Thank you very much, Debra. Thank you very much for a really nice presentation. Any comments from the panelists or the audience?
Can Monica, can we reserve this until the end? Let's hear the other speakers first.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then we can hear the, yeah.
Sure. The next speaker will be Giulia. Are you ready, Giulia? Can you share your screen?
Yes. Wait a second. Can you see? Okay, so well, actually, I decided to take this opportunity to put also a little bit my experience in this to see if there are questions, because I'm also still learning, and I have important role models like you to follow. So I think that I was thinking about the more general women in renewable energy. Why? And looking into the literature, I found that women probably represented most 1/3, but I think less, that it was around 30% of the global sustainable energy workforce. So if you think about that, that means that we are not that few, but it's only 30%. So we should do more because to really achieve a transition to this paradigm shift in energy, we need to tackle this challenge from different perspectives. And this is, I believe, what it's needed now. It's needed we need this more inclusive approach and diverse talents from women and from our perspectives into the problem. So I think this is an opportunity, but this is also very urgent. So we, as a scientist, we have to take this opportunity and make an effective action. This is what I believe. And also transferring our passion and our ideas to the youngest generation. So, well, I don't want to take too much time with respect to the other panelists, but I think that all together we can really put the forces together and give these complementary perspectives with respect to what men also put on the table, which is also important, but we give a complementary perspective, which is needed to be more complete and to give a more diverse and inclusive vision of the problem. I just want to also highlight for the youngest, we are on aperitif time now, so I think it's funny to show this picture. I think science, especially for us, for women, but for all, is more than that, of course. Science is more, and I think that science is also meeting incredible female scientists who can inspire us, building strong relations, pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones. Is a lot of struggle, we know, but that's the best place to learn. This is what I believe. And transferring the knowledge to the younger generation. So this is what I just want to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Giulia. Thank you very much for a very nice talk or opinion of this topic. Our last speaker is Anna Fontcuberta. Are you there? Yes. Do you have slides to share? Or?
I'm trying.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is a difficult topic, how to make scientific research an inclusive world. So I just have, I start with some words about scientific world. So the advancement of science, so we're here because we like to make science progress, it's fun. We go where no one else has been there before. If it's a discovery, no one has looked at it before, so it's exciting, but it can also be a bit scary. We are here because we like to have ideas, discoveries. We like to feel smart, I think most of us, especially when we have success. But let's face it, it's hard. And we have many moments where we are desperate because we don't find the solution, but that's part of the fun too. And face it again, you know, this graph here says, you know, the number of fame as a function of skill required. You see that being a scientist, you require a lot of skills for not much fame. So it's a hard job. So what is it exactly what we want to do in science? So if we are goal-oriented, we might be like this chicken here, that, you know, we go to the goal, but we're not able to get there. So we need to be a bit creative and curious to find a way around and to find new solutions. And this can only happen with real teamwork. What is teamwork then? Teamwork is working of, and when you talk about teamwork, it can be your own team, but it can also be the scientific community as a team. So we all contribute in different ways, and this collaboration and exchange of ideas in a very open way is very important. And then I'd like to ask you, what do you think is teamwork? What is an ideal team? And an ideal team, the comfortable team would be a team that all the people look the same. But that's very boring. And chances are that a team that everybody looks the same will not have great discoveries. So of course, it's harder to work with people that look very different from you and think very differently from you. But at the end, this is really much more fun, and that's how we really can make huge discoveries and progress. And as Debra said, science is too important to be left to men. It's the same. Science is too important to be left to the same kind of people. So many people have said it, if you look at different kinds of discoveries, great challenges are really requiring tight and more diverse teams. And so this is known in companies, this should be known more in science too. So now, is science inclusive? We all know it is not. We have heard that. So you see here, Europe-wide, that's the statistics when you go from your undergrad, grad students, and then later on, when you go towards professorship, you see how there is a positive discrimination for men. If you're a man, you have higher chances of becoming professor. This is very clear here. So if we look at EPFL, right now we have 29% women, and this is one of the top universities in Europe and in Switzerland. So if we start, then it means that we want to increase this percentage here. And so we don't want these women not only to start here, to get them here and not go down, but go up. Now, it's not only about women, it's beyond gender. It's about accepting people that look different, that think different, and that's my personal views is this is very, very important. So at the end, it's about respect of everybody, independent of how they are. And so how to make science more inclusive? I don't have the solution, but I would say objective number one is fixing this leak in the pipeline. We have a lot of leaks for women, but also for all kinds of origins. How to do that, I really don't have the solution, but we have to make sure that we all understand the issue and that it concerns all of us, because at the end, science and the scientific progress suffers from it. We have to be aware of our own unconscious bias. That's work that we all have to do, or even women, we have to do that. We have to speak up when something happens that we think it's not okay, even if it's small. You have to explain the other what the consequences are. Otherwise, you are accomplice of what's happening. So speaking up and learning how to speak up in a respectful way is very important, I find myself. And then creating incentives or structures that support inclusiveness. So myself, I am the president of WISH. This is a foundation that helps female students at EPFL. We give them fellowships to go abroad. We help them. And I also created a kind of fellowship to help women to come to EPFL and get paid for that. This is called Inspire Award. And then, become the best role model you can. People are watching you. So be the change you want to see, as Gandhi said, and that's it for me. That's all I wanted to say. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. And now is the time for questions and comments and discussions. So maybe if somebody from the audience wants to make a question, please use the Q&A panel on the bottom of your screen. In the chat, there's one. There's one question from Shahila Caban Huertas.
Francisca de Rossi.
No, yo no la tengo. Yes. Francisca first. How much do you think maternity leave affects women's career, and how much do you think it is correlated to the leak in the pipeline? Somebody want to answer this? How much do you think maternity leave affects women's career, and how much do you think it is correlated to the leak in the pipeline? For me, I don't have kids, but to write my papers, to do my research, I really need to concentrate. Really, I mean, it's very important. And if I have to cut my career for 6 months because I have a baby, I think it must be very difficult to come back and be in the same thinking that you were before leaving. It's like going for vacation for 1 month, right? So what do you think about this?
Is Sossina still online?
Sossina? No, I think Sossina.
She has done it. High impact institutions with children.
I can say something.
I think so.
Yeah, Zakia?
yeah, I think Sossina has had to go somewhere, either to teach a class or something. I can share with you my experience. I got married after I finished high school, and I joined my husband, who was going for graduate work in Houston, Texas. And I started my undergraduate and graduate graduate degrees. I did it in Houston because he was, he was still studying in at the Rice University. So in 6 years, I got my undergraduate and graduate degrees, and I had 2 children, 2 lovely kids. And it requires that you have somebody to support you and believe in your goal. And I was lucky at the time. My former husband was very supportive for me to pursue my studies. And I also had a wonderful woman who was a neighbor, was like a grandmother to my kids, who took care of my kids while I was going to school. So I think with some discipline and structure, one can achieve, a lot. Regarding maternity leave, a few years ago, I was the division director of materials research at the National Science Foundation. And the National Science Foundation has a wonderful program for faculty in academia, women and men. And they can take, for the tenure, because, tenure is very important in the US. So what they do is they stop the clock when a woman is carrying a child and have a baby. So they can stop the clock for a period of time, and it doesn't count towards their tenure, and the productivity at that time also is stopped. So I think society has to adapt to that. Women carry kids, and has to be adjusted to the family. I don't think it's fair that women can deprive themselves of having kids to pursue a career. It's not an either or. It's either it's a career. It's a family first and a career. So I think society has to adjust. So it's a cultural thing.
Yes.
I would also add,
share my experience. I'm not in the panel, but I can share. I had my first child when I was in industry in the US. I had 6 weeks off. The same day that I had my baby, my colleague had a motorbike accident. He hit a deer, and he had 6 weeks off to recover from that. And of course, the inequality, they're just shocking. And when I came back to work, some people told me, "Oh, how did you enjoy your vacation?" And yeah, I think there is an impact. The difference in treatment is for sure there. At least in the US, I experienced that. I know that in Europe, it's different. My second child I had at UC Berkeley, and there's no maternity leave. They don't call that. They call modified active duty, where you can choose one of the things that you do and stop doing that. And those things are research, teaching, and service. So I chose to stop teaching, and my male colleagues get the same benefit when they have a child. So it's equal, even though we know it's not equal. The job of being a parent is not equal. At least they take that. The difference that I see is that when my male colleagues take the modified active duty license, they write grant proposals, they write papers, they have a boost in their research, while the female are taking care of the kids. So I think it makes a big difference. I think it has an impact in our career, and having children is very satisfying, just like having the job. So pragmatic about it and hire nannies. So pay for the care so that you can continue your career. Yeah. That's my sense.
Anna, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have one child, and many of my PhD students have had children during the PhD. And I would never regret what this, and I think my PhD students either. So it's a wonderful thing to do. As they say, get help. And there is a reason why ERC and many universities remove 1.5 years of your CV when you have a child, and it's because it takes a lot of your time and energy, a lot of your energy. So it is like it reduces time for your career, but you gain so much from it that if you want to have a child, don't renounce to this for your career, and you'll get there anyway. So just do it.
Pass to the next question, but I just want to say that this is not going to change if we don't complain, ladies, if you don't ask for more rights, okay? And we usually don't do it, okay?
Monica,
yes,
Monica,
yes,
this has already changed in the US. The National Science Foundation, as I told you, has developed this program for maternity leave many years ago now. And this is because women were complaining about the maternity leave and the how do I say, the punishment they get for being pregnant and having kids, as far as their tenure is concerned, as far as the grant is concerned. So things are changing very, very slowly, but they are changing. And I have a daughter who chose to have children on her own. She has a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old kid. She works for the World Bank, and she was on maternity leave from early March until just 2 days ago. So the World Bank has an excellent program for maternity leave. And I think we should push for having programs like that in academia, in industry, in government. Like the US government, they don't call it maternity leave, they call it family leave. So there's no such thing as maternity leave in the US government as compared to my understanding in Europe, where you have long maternity leave. Where I come from in Egypt, for instance, I was born in Cairo, Egypt. You can get 1 year maternity leave from academia, and it can be even extended if you have another child. So that definitely we need to push for more equitable treatment of women and their families.
So we have several questions. I think we have to keep going, because if not, I mean, it's very interesting. We have to keep going. I have to tell those people who is making questions that if we don't finish with the question, please feel free to contact any of these female panelists or also our speakers with this kind of questions. We will be very happy to help you. Don't be afraid. Just send us an email that you were here and you need to ask us that question, okay? This next question is from Kate, and she says, do you have any advice for dealing with sexist microaggressions from male colleagues? Ladies?
My response to that is, that's Dr. Bitch to you. The more humor you can throw at the men, the better. They really don't like an angry woman. So if you can respond in a way that's got a little bit of a humorous tinge to it, that's all the better. Just as I like to say, well, you're only here because you're a man and you've been over-rewarded your entire life.
Debra, did this action work for you?
Always. But then I am formidable. So that's my personality. So that's where I say you have to find ways that convolve your personality, but you do have to step out of your comfort zone. And you have to remember that stereotypically men like pecking orders, and a lot of this is nominally being used to put you in your place. So if you've got some statistics, or you've got some, shall we say, statements right at the tip of your tongue, so you don't feel like, well, I should have said this, but you only think of it an hour later, then you can respond to those things. So in some sense, it is training. I like to humiliate the men. So when you've got a student who said, oh my God, I worked, till 2 in the morning and I've been here, 80 hours this week. And that of course is usually being said by a young man. You turn to them and you say, I'm so sorry you're so inefficient at doing your science. These are the kinds of things that can turn on their head. They're trying to claim I'm better than you because I'm more dedicated than you. And you're of the mode, well, I can work smarter, not harder.
Okay. Any other question, ladies? I'm sorry, any other comment? I think when there are any type of aggression, there must be some kind of legal support for this. The institution where you are or the people around you, I mean, you have to be able to do something. I mean, an aggression is never to be allowed. I'm gonna go to a next question.
Monica, let me comment on your comment, because legal support, typically when you have a problem in an institution, at least in the United States, the human resource, or the Office of Equal Opportunity, behind the scene, they are usually working with the administration. They don't work with you. So when you seek legal support, actually it fires back on you, at least under the present circumstances. So I would say beware of that. And I personally experienced that. If you seek equal, if you're equity in treatment or how do I say, you have to be careful about it, because they don't work with you. They will work with your boss.
But then that's why we have to be aware of our rights and to be prepared for this, to be informed about all of these issues and what we can do and not do. Is very important to be prepared and informed, I think. So I have to pass to the next question, and that is, I'm curious about, this is from Sahilia. I'm curious about how you feel when you realize that you are the only one in a room full of men after your PhD. Maybe the question is, how do you feel now that you're in a room full of many women? I think also is a good question for this. I think we all see a different atmosphere. I don't know if any of the panelists wants to comment on this.
Monica, the business community is far ahead of women in science in that respect. Their studies show that 3/8 of the room needs to be female before their concerns and their contributions and their questions are acknowledged by the bulk of the men in the room. So if you are the only woman in the room, you really do have to have strategies. And that's where many men can be our allies. So there's too often you come up with a trenchant observation or a very good suggestion, and it's ignored till it's made again by a man 10 minutes later. And then, of course, it's the Red Sea parting. So what women can do for women and our male allies can do for women and people of color is to intercede, to emphasize, to say, oh, well, Zakia just made a great point. Let's go back to that. We can do that for one another. That's how we amplify our cross-section in meetings.
Okay, thank you.
I have in meetings that I was the only one when I was ignored. And then the male would repeat. I would say, "Oh, that's what I was saying. I'm glad you agree." And then I would. And there was only once that I did something more shocking, I guess, because everybody was wearing a tie and a suit, and everybody was a man. And then I asked one of my colleagues if he had an extra tie, and then during lunch I put the tie on, and I came back, and then the organizer said, "Anna, you have a tie," and I said, "I'm trying to fit in," and then that committee, the next year, it had 3 women in the committee, so they got the message. It was shocking, that committee. But I think you have to make yourself heard. Otherwise, it makes it more difficult for them to understand that they need to have different people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to read the next question from Carla. Have any of you experienced the chemical industry world? And if you so, did you find any difficulties on adjusting or being accepted to the work climate? Any comments about this? I think it's related to la question before, right? About we have to make our voice heard and try to adjust to this. We have to try to be fit in. Debra?
I think you find allies, and many men are willing to be our allies. So that's where being subversive it becomes a game. So once men understand, the viewpoints of women and people of color are ignored, then they can step in and help. They can also learn about biases and step up and say things that, that was a very racist joke. Why are you saying it? So if you're comfortable saying these things out loud, do it. If not, subvert some of your male colleagues to do it for you, because that then changes everybody's perception. Sad to say, the world changes when the men in power decide to change it. But we have to keep kicking them.
I agree. I agree with Debra. I never really felt discrimination when I was a graduate student. I was in a group of Jean Margrave at Rice University, and I was the only woman among 24 men. And at the time, I really, I was surrounded by supportive colleagues, whether postdoctoral fellows or graduate students. And my thesis advisor was a wonderful person, and I call him my chemistry father, essentially. So I only started feeling discrimination when I started working at the Naval Research Lab and even at the National Science Foundation after that. So it's only when I started reaching higher up on the ladder that I started feeling it. So one of my advices would be to surround yourself, whether in the work environment or even at home, with supportive people. So one of the advice I would give for young women: be selective in choosing your partner. You need a partner that is supportive of you and your vision and your dreams. And if I've read a book many years ago about women scientists who received Nobel Prizes in physics or chemistry, and you'll be surprised how supportive an environment, was important for their success.
Yeah, thank you, Sakya. I want to read another question from, I hope I'm saying it right, Mirjana. She says, thank you for the nice and inspiring talks. Considering that the discrepancy starts around the postdoc level, what should be done during this time to lower this discrepancy? More funding for women, more support. I think this is the most vulnerable time for women, especially in sense that we start family around this time. Plus, we need to secure the funding for the future. She's asking, what should be done? Or what should we do during this time to lower this discrepancy?
Isn't the answer yes? I mean, you want to welcome. To me, it's it's not critical mass. It's making the others, women, non-binary genders, people of color, feel completely LGBTQ, feel completely welcome in the environment, and that's a role everybody can play to make sure they understand how that local environment works, and to make sure they feel welcome in terms of how they're interacting with their colleagues and their department mates. So to me, it's a percolation network. It's all about communication, and to expect just the number density. We get a certain number of women or people of color, the problem magically solves, which means it doesn't, because we all have different goals. Not all women want the same thing, and we don't all like each other. So we really do have to put the burden on a broader community to change the culture. And that's why climate change to me is the most effective. It shows that if you are incorporating talent regardless, and they are performing with great science and innovation and creativity and productivity, ultimately, some of the dimmer light bulbs scratch their head and they say, oh, well, you know, she's doing things very differently and it's having this great outcome. That starts to, that's the proof.
If I would say, yeah, a way to support, to feel people welcome is to give them grants, you know, awards or grants that allow them to go further and they feel like they can make it because they are still a part of one of the top people. So giving grants to young postdocs to pursue their research, I think this is important. Because it's not only the money, but they feel they belong to the club, which sometimes we don't think we belong to the club because we're a minority.
Yeah. Any other comment? I will read the last question, and this is from a mail from the audience, from Professor Pedro Gomez Romero. Thank you very much for these insightful thoughts. I agree that the female leaking pipeline is a serious problem in academics, and I'm afraid it might be even worse in the corporate world, would you say? In any case, let us keep working to make an academic world a model of integration of diversity. And I think Debra want to answer to this question.
I had started typing, but I had lost what I was typing. I will say that my understanding, since it's very hard to get the actual data out of companies from research intensive industry with respect to how many women are on your technical staff, they seem to be hiring commensurate with the production pool who's coming out with a PhD. People of color still run into some serious issues in the United States, but it's academics that's most visible. So the burden is on them to be inclusive, to bring in the talent base, not just the usual suspects. But that requires search committees filled with faculty who already have too many demands on their time to actually do the hard job of finding the talent, to check out the professional societies for Hispanics and Latinos in the United States, or the Black physics societies. They're there, they know where the talent is, and we've already asked so much of the faculty. So that means the Smart University is creating resources to help identify the talent. It's the most visible place, academics. And so if that changes its face to the broader world, I think there will be a deeper cultural change. We still have what I call bedrock. There is, when I really want to depress the audience, there's no major society or culture or religion in which women are respected. So that's what we are constantly fighting against.
Thank you, Debra. Any other comment on this? If not, I would like to raise a comment or question for everybody. This is about what I have seen in my co-workers or colleagues from another research centers or collaborators. Sometimes there are discrimination, or they treat women differently, or they separate us from the team. And I have found out that they really don't realize they are doing this. They really don't realize they have this behavior. And when I'm trying now to tell people about it, to tell if males do this, and they are honestly surprised because they didn't realize that what they are doing wrong. Can you comment on this? What we can do about it besides obviously talking to them and make awareness of this? If you have any comments on this and any situation in your case?
I'm not a member of the panel, but maybe I can also share my experience.
Of course.
I think it is deep in society. Even women are biased against the women. I think it is, there are plenty of studies telling that also when we receive a curriculum, there is a lady name or there is a name from a person coming from a different culture, we tend to be repulsive. Maybe we are afraid, I don't know. So there are many mechanisms. my strategy has been always, I think, the one of Debra. So I think to act a little bit with the irony. Okay, when I dare to do it, it depends on the mood. You know, if you are in a good mood, you can make a comment, you can make a joke. Otherwise, you risk to be very violent. And this is also my experience that depending on the culture, then you tend to pass on the beach side. And at a certain point, I was having a kind of a course on leadership, and I discussed with this person, I think he was a psychologist, giving this leadership course. And I asked him, do you think it's better for me to be a bitch or to be a nice lady with my colleagues and to say, yes, of course, you're right, blah, blah, blah. And the suggestion was being a bitch, be a bitch, because only if you're a bitch, at a certain point, they will respect you. I think it's difficult. You have to choose the situation case by case. And I think it also depends on the culture you are in. I see for me, it has been also a double challenge because I'm also a foreigner. I think many of us are also foreigner in the place where you are. I think it is a double challenge because as academic, we are often going to work in a different country. And I always say I have 3 problems in my life. So the order is I'm a lady, I'm a foreigner, I'm Italian, and I'm small. And I'm small in a place where everybody's 2 meters tall. And but I think then we have, each one of us, we have to find a strategy to be heard or to be seen. Sometimes I want to jump, I want to. So, but some people say that I have a very strong voice and that maybe it is my strategy. When I speak, then everybody hears me, even if they don't see me. But okay, so it's yes, pro and cons every strategy, and you have to adapt to it.
Nice, very nice.
I need to comment on I really would like to comment on this because there is a big difference in perception when men are aggressive in their work versus women being aggressive in their work. And when men are aggressive in their work, they are praised. Whereas when women are aggressive in their work, they are labeled with the B word.
Yeah.
So that's really unfortunate because Debra mentioned earlier about self-confidence, actually Debra and Sossina, you know, and I mean, at least on the surface, I don't lack self-confidence. Even when I was probably younger, I had a lot of self-doubt and self-esteem issues. And I think that comes from my father, who wrote to me when I was a little girl, good, better, best, we shall never rest until our good is better and our better is best, which tells you can never be good enough. But anyway, that's besides the issue, it's besides the point. The point is that how you are perceived as an aggressive woman, it's not it's not in a good way or like men are perceived. And this has to be a cultural thing that needs, you know, the ice needs to be broken, you know, or the glass ceiling needs to be shattered, because men and women should be treated equally in the way they behave.
I mean, I totally agree with you. When a man is very violent, I've been present in really violent.
Let me correct you. It's not violent, it's aggressive. Violent has a bad connotation.
But really at the limit of being extremely impolite, then they are considered leaders. If you do the same of even 90%, oh, Maria, this was very aggressive. I don't think so. But okay.
I think Ana Claudia, you wanted to say something?
Yes. I just wanted to add that picking the opportunity where you are, I mean, I have picked opportunities where I raised my voice and I said, you should listen to me, you're disrespecting me in the meeting. But I think also working with your colleagues that are your supportives, you can do some of that in the back of scenes, and I have found that that's very effective. So when I am in a meeting that something happens to me that I think it was not right, either I was ignored or then, and I had a colleague that I know well, then I'll go and talk to that colleague and say, listen, during that meeting, you really should have stepped up for me. I tried many times, it still didn't work. You should be aware of this. And especially in our hiring committee, I had some problems with this where every candidate I would bring up would be shut down by one person. And I told my other colleagues, and then that became a very effective tool to have, because when they noticed that was happening, then they would raise their voices, and that worked. So in the end of the day, we want to be successful, so you have to use different tools, and because for sure people they don't want to work with anybody that's aggressive. So you have to find other ways, and I think the male colleagues are very important, and that also helps them become more aware of what happens.
Monica, I'd like to add something here. Is that we have experienced something at EPFL that is unfortunate, but looks like female professors have 10, young female professors have 10 higher chance to be sued by their own students. It turns to be that students accept much worse the authority of a woman, especially if the woman tells them they're not doing a good job. And this is, we've seen this happens especially in institutes or departments where there are very few female professors. So we need more role models, and we need to change the culture, because I mean, it cannot be that students cannot accept their boss saying you're not doing a good job. So there is more to do there.
And we also need to teach our students about implicit bias and unconscious expectations.
Exactly,
So just as a confident, what appears to be aggressive female professor is rated more negatively by her students, a man who is more nurturing in how he approaches the teaching is often also graded harshly by the students. So it's not just our, our overseers, the powers that be need to learn this, and our cohort needs to learn this. It's actually the students who are coming through need to understand this. And that can be, to me, can be coupled with ethics, another thing we don't teach in our scientific curriculum. There are just so many human aspects that we really should spend some time on.
I agree.
Okay, so I think we have to end up the round table. I don't know if there is any other question. If not, we are going to close the webinar here. First,
Monica,
we are going to invite you. Yes,
Monica, let me just share that this month is Global Diversity Month. October, we are living in October, Global Diversity Month. So, I think if you have any way to promote global diversity, this is your chance. This is, we are celebrating global diversity. So just remember, October is Global Diversity Month. Sorry, Monica, but I just wanted to mention that to the participants.
Thank you, Sakya. Thank you very much. And I thank you also all the panelists, because it's very interesting topics that we talk here. And I think we can keep talking about it for another hour. Unfortunately, we have to go. And now I have to invite you to the poster session. You have a link in the chat where you can go to the list of posters, and you can get in to any posters you want. The posters responsible for the poster will share the screen with the poster, and you can communicate and ask questions about it. For us, we're going to close the webinar. Before I let Sakya make a closure, I would like to thank very much, of course, Sakya and all the speakers and panelists that were here supporting us. I'm very happy. It was very interesting to see that we are able to put together this amount of top female scientists. It feels very nicely. And of course, Sakya, with all the support from last year and this year, and I hope many more. And I hope we can see you in the future webinars. Before I give the speak to Sakya, I want to thank Alex Argemi. He's the responsible for all the video that we have, all the technical, the webinar, responding questions, setting up everything. It was a lot of work. So Sakya and I have this little present for him and his team. I will give it to him. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much for all the support and help. And Sakya, if you want to close the session, the webinar, thank you very much.
Can you bring Alex? Can Alex come? Can you give it to him now?
Yes, I'm gonna ask him to
Yeah,
come.
I would like to, would like. Thank you, Alex.
It
And I
was my
commend you.
pleasure. It was my pleasure to be your partner today and every day. We have to do it together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you made it happen, and everything being live is very difficult. You know, many big organizations are pre-record everything because they are worried about glitches, but you did an outstanding job. So thank you so much, and congratulations.
You all made it very easy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alex. Thank you.
Well, I would like to close by thanking all the participants and obviously all the invited speakers and the panelists. This is the second year that Monica and I hold this event. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it's online and not. I would have preferred much better to be in Barcelona than stay in my home here and talk from here. Actually, I was talking to a colleague of mine about the online and should have been in Barcelona, and he says it's a crime not to be in Barcelona. But I hope that next year we will be able to meet in person. We're talking about different venues. We have not decided. One will be in Europe, and another one in Latin America or South America. We are trying to rotate so we can reach the whole globe here, move from one country or one continent to the other. And one thing I want to say that might be useful, it just came to me, and I tend to be spontaneous, that maybe one thing we learned from COVID-19 is that we can do a lot of things online and away from the office or away from the lab and still be very successful. And that can give hope to at least the next generation and our children that yes, you can raise a family, you can have children and be successful. And I would like to wish you all good luck and success in your careers and in your life.
Thank you very much, Sakya. Thank you very much, everybody. So we close the webinar. See you in the poster session and see you also next year. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.